It's okay. So I love how limited the perspective is in the film. It makes everything feel more real because you don't actually see anything really clearly happen.
Hmm.
Everything is implied. Everything is implied until the very end. And that's what the whole story is about, is like whether or not things are what he thinks they are. And obviously I love all the use of the photography gear and
Hmm.
things like that. Like that was really cool. The scene at the very end with that, like that was super cool. I've never seen the effect of like something bright in your eyes and then it going away.
Yeah.
That looks like how it looks in real life.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that the film was so grainy. Was it grainy for you? Like, I'm not as a bad
I
thing, but just
mean,
kind of as the quality of it. Like
older movies tend to
it,
be more grainy.
yes, but this is like he shot it like a high speed film,
Mm.
meaning it was darker in that room, so he had to use a brighter film stock, which introduces more grain into the image.
Oh.
So I just think that's an interesting choice for the film. I think it has something to do with how he wants it to be seen, which could be
Yeah.
like a little bit grittier, but still you don't see anything like gruesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like the uniqueness of the film.
Yeah.
Like you have the limited perspective, which I don't know. I really like this movie, and I don't really know why, but I
Well, we're here
still
to
really like it a
explore
lot.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's exciting. This is maybe I'll just let you know. This is my favorite Alfred Hitchcock film that I've seen. Yeah.
Really? And you've seen Psycho, right?
Yes.
I have not seen Psycho, but that's his most famous movie, for sure. I love that the whole thing, like half of the movie is POV shots, and the other half is just like Jimmy Stewart looking contemplative, and it works.
Yeah.
It's really interesting though, because it puts you in his position. Like you only see what he sees for almost all of it, except for one shot. There's one shot in the whole thing where you see from outside, which is when he's hanging off of the balcony or the little ledge
Oh yeah. Yeah.
outside his window. That's the only time you're not seeing it from inside the room or his perspective, which is interesting. That when he's in the most danger, like you're separated from him.
Yeah.
It trying to keep that air of distance from him, because it does have like it could have been a POV shot of him falling, but it's not.
Yeah. It's
Also, I think you see Hitchcock at one point in the
yeah.
film.
I was gonna say that. I noticed that the second
I was
time.
watching
I
it.
was
I
like,
said,
wait a
I said,
second.
is that Alfred? Is that Alfred over there? Is he over at the piano place? What's going on? It's also interesting. Most of the characters in the film never talk and never see Jimmy Stewart until he falls out of the window. It's like
That's true.
it's like 9 different films at once, but only a few of them ever say anything, and he never meets any of them except for the bad guy.
Yeah. I think that's another reason why viewers sympathize with Jimmy Stewart's character is because he's on the outside looking in, kind of, and he's just
Yeah.
viewing everybody's life.
It's similar to your observation about Citizen Kane, that you see. I mean, you see
Oh
Jimmy
yeah.
Stewart's face, but everything's from the perspective of the reporter. You feel connected to Jimmy Stewart's character as a person, but you also like can empathize with him in his shoes, rather than you being the person going around and finding out everything. Like in Citizen Kane, you are the reporter. The reporter is not a character. You are the reporter.
That's true.
In
Yeah.
this, the main character is your friend, and you're just with your friend, and you're seeing what he's seeing. Everybody thinks he's crazy until a certain point. And you're like, no, I don't think he's crazy. Look at what he saw. It's weird.
Yeah. Throughout the movie, what's his name? Do you remember his name? Or can I just say Jimmy Stewart?
His name is Jeff, I
Jeff.
think.
Okay. Hey.
His last name is Jeffrey. His like LB Jeffrey, and everyone just
Okay.
calls him Jeff.
Yes. So his assumptions are always questioned.
Yeah.
The police officer came over and was like, no, you're wrong, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting, and it makes him sort of an unreliable narrator,
Kind of. Yeah.
which
But
is interesting because I mean, I guess I can like speak for most people, but you connect with him so much,
yeah.
and I don't know. I don't know how that makes me feel.
I feel bad when he's like when the officer is like, yeah, there's no way there's no way that this could be right. And he goes, oh, okay, I guess. And you're like, oh, I guess. I like, even though you look at the description of the movie on Amazon, at least I saw it, it said horror/thriller. I'm like, horror/thriller is Jimmy Stewart in a room with a camera. What do you mean? And then sitting there, you're wondering, like, or I was wondering, like, is he just imagining this, or how is he connecting dots that don't exist? Like, I feel bad for him because I'm doing the same thing, like sitting there watching it happen. You're like, you want it to be
You want him to
what
be
he
right.
thinks it is. Yeah, you want him to be right, but you also don't want, like, it's not like you want somebody to die, but if that's what you think happened, it's important to know that that's what it is for sure. And so all these things, and then not supposed to go in the apartment. I love how early on that's set up, and then how, like, blatantly it's broken. Like, that gave me a visceral reaction. That was one of the scariest things. And it's just a woman climbing into a window. And I was like standing up. I was like, no, no, no.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed in Alfred Hitchcock movies. Is
Yeah.
I find myself constantly contradicting myself when I watch his movies. It's kind of manipulative. I mean, not gonna lie,
it is.
especially when I was watching Psycho. I was like, what? Like, who am I rooting for? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't exactly explain it to you because you haven't seen it, and that would be spoilers, so I can't say anything.
Yes.
But yeah,
That's fair. In this, he's saying he's like, you want to know what's in the apartment, but you can't go in the apartment. You're like, okay, we're not going to go in the apartment. Like, the audience says to themselves, that's out of the question, and that can't happen. And Jimmy Stewart believes this. This is why we think that, is because Jimmy Stewart's been right the whole time, and the times he's been wrong, we've wanted him to be right. And every time he's proven wrong about something, another piece of evidence shows up, and then the detective is just kind of like, oh, well, yeah. and so you're like, well, Jeffrey must be correct. And so when she climbs into the apartment, what's her name? Lisa, or is it
Liza.
Liza.
There we go.
Yeah. She's like, I don't know. She is an interesting character. The film ends with a song called Liza. Yeah,
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
and it shows like the very first shot of the film is just the looking out his window, and then the very last shot is him sleeping, like we always see him sleeping in the morning. It's funny how familiar you get with his, like, routine. Like, you feel like you know him. It's like, okay, he gets up, the nurse is there to help him, like, put like some kind of oil on his back or something, and then oh, you're not supposed to sleep in your wheelchair. Okay, I can't sleep in the chair anymore. Okay, and then he just stares out his window for, I don't know, 18 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know. You feel connected to him, and it's not boring like you would guess it would be. Like, I was never bored. I was always just kind of like, I wasn't immersed in it per se, but I wasn't bored. It had my attention, and it was kind of like the way you're not immersed when you're just looking out the window. I mean, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, actually, that's a great comparison. I agree with that. But anyway, so when we first meet Liza, she appears like almost like it's his dream,
Yeah,
or something like that, which is very interesting. And
she does that at the end too.
uh-huh.
When she just shows up and she's kissing him, it's very sudden. You're thinking, like, is this real? I think we're supposed to think that. And he uses a filter on her that makes everything look dreamlike. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I remember earlier in the film, before we met her, he says she's too perfect.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting.
Bring up is the fact that she's like a dream, like it can't be real because she's just too good to be true. Like, he's always looking at out the window at that other girl, and I think he's skeptical of it because that's the only way he's interacted with like a woman for a while, maybe. And so he's like, he isn't sure if it could be real. Like, could this really work as a real relationship that goes two ways? I don't know. I think that's one take on it. I thought it was interesting that that's just a constant element, though, is, well, the two ladies, the one that's always got guys over and the one that is always by herself. Like, at the end, we find out that the one girl who always had guys over was waiting for her boyfriend or husband, who was in the military, to come back. And the other girl was going to commit suicide, but then she heard the music of the composer, who was very, very lonely, and she meets him. And I don't know. I like that. Like, when she was setting up the dinner by herself and like having dinner by herself and pretending there was someone there, like I audibly went, "Oh." It's so
Yeah.
sad. And there's not even any words in that scene. It's just Jimmy Stewart looking out the window and this lady's eating dinner by herself. Like, and it's
Yeah.
the saddest part of the movie, even though there's a murder involved in that. Like that part made me feel the most emotion, I think, that other than like, dread or concerned.
Hmm.
The only other time I felt like really sad was that, and when she's about to take all those pills and end her life. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's interesting that that's not even a part of the main plot. Neither is the thing with the composer or the thing with the other girl. That one lady who makes sculptures. I don't even know why she was in this movie. Like, is she just someone there, or what was her deal? Like, I think she has a role. I just don't understand what it is. And that one married couple that ends up being upset with each other at the end, but they were happy at the beginning. I feel like that's kind of ominous because that feels like it's setting up another situation for like, I don't know if this is too morbid, but like the whole movie's about a guy killing his wife and trying to hide the evidence, and that guy just got really upset with his wife at the very end, and they had only gotten married recently. So I feel like that, like, over the years will grow and then it'll end up being another situation like this. And the fact that Jimmy Stewart breaks his leg again at the end makes me think like,
Oh,
yeah, that seems like this is going to happen again.
that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, you're right. That was a little morbid, but I think that you
Yeah.
are onto something. I I'm not going to do a very good job of explaining this, but I kind of think that each like situation, I guess, like each window
Mm-hmm.
is somehow connected to the future of Jimmy Stewart's character.
Interesting. Well, he feels lonely when he's at home by himself, I think. So
Right.
he
So
relates
like,
to that.
Miss Lonely Heart, obviously that's,
Mm-hmm.
and don't want to sound morbid, but his relationship with Liza is kind of interesting. He doesn't always treat her nicely, right?
Yeah, I felt bad that, like, yeah. And you feel weird about it because you feel like you're Jimmy Stewart or you're Jimmy Stewart's friend.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why are you doing that? Like, and he tells her to. I actually, at one point, when she was saying all that stuff, when they were arguing, and she was like sitting on the bed, and he was like trying to talk to her, and she just kept talking and talking. I actually said, "Shut up," and then he goes, "Shut up," and I was like, "No, wait, no,
Oh my gosh.
it sounds so mean now." Sorry.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's funny.
Yeah, that's an example of how Hitchcock can
Mhm.
you though, because he made me say what Jimmy Stewart was gonna say. Like that doesn't
Yeah.
happen a lot.
Yeah,
Jimmy Stewart was perfect for this role. It's so subtle.
I agree.
Like I couldn't imagine anybody else doing that. I mean, at like first glance, you think like, well, anyone could sit in a room and just look outside like this, eyes kind of squinted, and he's like, or I'm gonna need to grab my camera. Could you get my camera or binoculars or whatever? But the way he does it makes you realize he's thinking about everything that's going on, and you can tell sometimes where he's going to look next and what he's going to think about it because he knows, and you can just look at his face, and you get so familiar with the whole layout of where he lives because that's all you see, because that's all he sees. I don't know. It does such a good job with that. I've never seen a movie that deals with kind of the familiarity of a setting like
Mhm.
this, except for Minari, which bounces around to a few different locations. But this movie takes place in entirely one place. And the only other film that I've seen that was like that is another Hitchcock film called Rope, also starring Jimmy Stewart. That one is more intense than this one, but this one's so much more fun to watch than that one. It's so much easier to enjoy. Like Rope is not a movie you sit down to enjoy. Rope is something you think like, okay, I'm gonna watch Rope now, and then you watch it, and then at the end you're like, all right, I get to leave. I get to leave that very uncomfortable room. This is great. I mean, that whole movie, like, I mean, if you want to sit and just sweat for like an hour and a half from stress, Rope is the movie that will do that. You want to
That's
watch
funny.
people eat dinner and like cry. You start crying silently because you just can't take the pressure anymore. Like that's what that whole movie is. It's more morbid than this movie in a weird way. I'm not gonna say anything else. Like it's a very dark movie.
Yeah, Alfred Hitchcock really knows how to manipulate an audience.
Definitely master of suspense,
Yes.
rivaled only by, in my opinion, Orson Welles' opening to I think It's either the lady from Shanghai or Touch of Evil. I can't remember which one it is. One of them opens with a long shot. I haven't seen either of those movies, but I've heard of this. A long shot of a car just driving around a city, and it stopped. Or at the beginning of this shot, it's a title sequence, and someone puts a bomb in this car, and you see that it's going to go off in like 3 minutes, I think. And you're watching this long shot go on for 3 minutes, knowing there's a bomb in the car. Hitchcock used this, not this scene specifically, but this description of a scene. He said, what you do to create tension is show the audience a bomb, tell them that it's going to go off, and then let them wait. That's exactly what Orson Welles did. I don't know if this came out before or after Hitchcock became a big deal, but it's totally his style. I wonder which one got inspiration from who.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to explore Liza's character more because
Yes.
there's a lot there.
She's the most active character in the movie, I'd say, other than the murderer.
She definitely plays a big role in the movie because, I mean, we already talked about her dreamlike entrance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it wouldn't work without her, and if she had listened to Jeff the whole time, then the guy wouldn't have been caught, and he would have just showed up at the apartment, eventually finding out who Jimmy Stewart was and where he lived. That one part, this is a tangent, but like, Jimmy Stewart's on the phone, and he's talking to his friend, and he's like, okay, I'll talk to you later. And he hangs up, and then immediately gets a call, and he goes, oh my gosh, the guy just walked back into, or I forget his name. What's the name of the murderer?
I don't remember.
I don't know. Mr. Something. He's like, Mr. Something just walked back into his apartment. And then he pauses, and he's like, hello? And it's just silent. I stood up at that point without even trying to. That was terrifying. And then that whole next sequence of just, he hangs up and he sits there and he's like, you're like, what is he going to do? There's nothing he can do. He can't leave his apartment. He can't go anywhere. He doesn't have any weapons. He has nothing except his flash from his camera. And you hear the steps for like a minute. You just hear steps. I don't know if it was a minute. It felt so long. The guy walking up the stairs and he's just sitting there. You're just, I don't know. It's suspenseful, obviously. And the door opens. He walks in and I like how Jimmy Stewart, like the scene starts with Jimmy Stewart being kind of the one in power because the guy asks him, what do you want? Like he's afraid. He wants to kind of start by making a deal with him. Jimmy Stewart doesn't try to make a deal. He doesn't say anything. And this makes the guy angry. And then the guy sees that he's in a chair and just charges at him. But then Jimmy Stewart blinds him enough for the police to show up before just after he falls out the window, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that part contrasts, like you said, from so much of the rest of the movie. I think part of the reason that it doesn't feel real is not just that we don't see things from his perspective, but just because it's so different from everything else that's happened.
Yeah.
Because he's actively participating in the plot against the antagonist. Like there's no filter. It's just him and the other guy. And he's weaker than the other guy because he's injured. And so he loses physically, but the other guy gets caught and is sent away. What were we talking about before? We were talking about Liza.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got to that. Oh, I think we were talking about her going into the apartment, and then I got to like what happened after that.
Mm-hmm.
So she enters like she's in a dream, but before that, we're introduced to her through a conversation
It's true.
that Jimmy Stewart has with his nurse, and he's talking about why he doesn't want to get married. And shortly after that conversation, that married couple moves in right next door, or not next door, but like across the way, and he sees them. And then after that, Liza shows up, and she looks like she's not real, and that's how he feels about her. So putting all that together, at the end, she's reading a book about the Himalayas, I think. It's some travel thing. And you can tell that she doesn't enjoy reading it. She not that she doesn't enjoy reading it, but she puts it down and picks up a fashion magazine. That's actually the very last shot of the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And unless you count the part where it says the end and it's just the picture of a window, but it's showing that she's trying to care about what he cares about, and it's working because she was fully immersed in this whole thing that he had going on, and put herself at risk more than he did. Like he puts himself at risk on accident, she actively goes out and does stuff and gets detained by the
Mhm.
police. And I don't know any other story where that feels so, oh my goodness, I can't believe that she got caught by the police. That's such a terrible thing. You care, not just that you care about it, but you've been an observer for so long. When things start happening, you're like, oh no, this is real. And
Yeah.
and it feels real. I don't know. But her role in the story is such that she cares about Jimmy Stewart and she wants to help him and she wants him to try to connect with her the same way she's trying to connect with him.
Mhm.
And he's not really doing that. Every time she suggests something, he just kind of shuts her down until she starts helping him out with this. And he's willing to go along with like her ideas. And she kind of sparks it even more. And it's like, oh, this might be this might be that. And she's the one who brings about the whole idea of looking into the handbag. He wasn't
Mhm.
even thinking about that before.
Mhm.
He told her about it like kind of off the cuff, just nonchalantly. And she's like, wait, that's important.
Yeah.
And she ends up getting the wedding ring from there, which ends up being the piece of evidence that brings this guy to justice. And her role in this is kind of as insurance that Jimmy Stewart's not crazy, but she's also supporting him and proving to him that she can handle more than what he thinks she could handle at the beginning.
It's true.
I like how Hitchcock kind of breaks the stereotype of like the rich people who don't know about anything and aren't willing to be in danger.
Mhm.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that are actually like that, but the fact that this lady likes Jimmy Stewart, who's not as rich as she is, and she does all this stuff for him and gets captured by the police trying to help him. Like, she could have completely separated herself from all of this if she wanted to. She didn't have to do anything. She
Yeah.
didn't even have to go to his house. This whole thing happened because she went to his house to see how he was doing.
Yeah.
Jimmy Stewart never would have gotten past asking his friend for help, the detective, and that guy wouldn't have done anything, and this murderer would have gotten away. So her Liza caring about Jeffrey is what ends up getting this guy caught because she's at Jeffrey's house and she sees these things and she realizes this is a weird thing that's going on. And then she's the one who actually goes into the apartment. I think that there's definitely more to her side of the story, but I don't know if we can understand that without looking at the nurse as well. Because she has an interesting perspective. She's very blunt, which I thought was kind of funny. She's like, "Oh, he must be scrubbing the blood off the walls." Like, jeez. Okay. Even the other characters have that reaction. They're like, "Why'd you have to say it like that?" And she goes, "How did you want me to say it?"
Yeah. Yeah. Her character is interesting too. What do you think?
I think that she has that like intuition thing that she believes in just like Liza does. She's less willing to put herself in danger when she doesn't see it making sense. And she's more similar to Liza than she is to Jeffrey. I think also her perspective on marriage is the same one as that of Liza.
Mhm.
And I think that like having two against one is the only thing that could really convince Jeff to change his mind about things. So I think that's part of her role. And another thing is she's taking care of him in a different aspect, but the same amount that Liza is. So she's there in the morning and Liza's there in the evening. And they're the only people he sees, except for his friend and the murderer.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that she isn't willing to go into the apartment, and she doesn't try to stop Liza from going into the apartment.
I feel like she kind of like keeps them together, sort of like she's kind of
She
that like
does.
middle ground.
She gives another outside perspective to everything. They're
Mhm.
both in it. They both see things just through the window. After like halfway through the film, Liza is seeing everything the way that Jeff is, but the nurse, she's still kind of an outsider, just a little
Mhm.
bit. And so that's kind of reflected in how she doesn't try to stop Liza more than just shaking her head from going into the apartment because she's just observing. She's kind of just watching too. But she is actively trying to keep them together in a subtle way, I think. Maybe that's why she has them like maybe that's why she agrees so early on that this is a murder for sure and is so open about it cuz she just wants to kind of get them to talk to each other.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
It makes sense with her character too. And
Yes.
how she talks about her husband and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And with that one part, it's the cheesiest part of the whole thing, I think, is her the like, how would you get your wedding ring off? When would that be? Like, what would they have to do to you? And she goes, oh, for them to take my wedding ring off, they would have to chop off my finger. And she says it in a way that you're like, okay, why would you say it like that? And I think that she's acting in the story, like she's acting a little bit too much because she's trying to play into their idea just to kind of keep them together and to get him to marry her.
Oh,
So she's
I
telling them
see.
with that statement, she's telling them how important marriage is, her relationship to her husband and how strong that is, and also kind of her plan to try to get them to get married.
Yeah, she's being dramatic to carry out her plans.
Exactly.
That makes so much sense. I never thought about it like that before. But yes, definitely the way she said that about the wedding ring and the finger being chopped off, that was very odd.
Yes. It's a really interesting movie. I remember when it ended, I was thinking it's like this is everything I would ask for in a thriller type movie, which is kind of the slow pace. Everything is very spread out as far as like plot points go, like clear plot points. When things happen, it feels so real, but it keeps your attention and it's not boring. And it's super creative with how it does pretty much everything. It's really creative film. That's my favorite part about this for sure. Is it's just how unlike almost everything else it is.
Yeah, I mean, I already said this, but that's one of the reasons why I like this film so much is because of how unique it is. And okay, so I want to talk about the pianist.
Okay.
So throughout the movie, he's working very hard to create this perfect piece of music.
Yes.
And he works so hard at this that he ends up being lonely.
Yes.
And I think that kind of has to do with Jeff in a way because
I see what you're saying. He lets his passion for photography and travel kind of get in front of his relationship with Liza.
Mm-hmm.
The pianist maybe does the same thing. We never even talk to him actually, but we see him by himself from the beginning, and he's always playing the piano throughout the whole thing. All the music in this film is practical, and it never is full. It's always far away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like there's no impractical sound in the film. Nothing is out of order linearly. Everything happens exactly as it would happen. Nothing is like conceptual or anything like that. It's very, very grounded. There's not a single piece of what you might call movie magic in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's all for real. I mean, the closest you get to something being like movie magic, I guess you could say, is like is the POV shots where you see the outline of the binoculars.
Yeah.
But that's his actual perspective. So it fits in perfectly. But with the pianist, like you see him working on it, you see him writing it, and then you see him get drunk and upset with it, and he throws the papers around everywhere. Then shortly after that, he's playing it, and Liza, like, Jeff is not paying any attention to it. He's just looking at the window. But Liza looks away from where he's looking, and she's like, look, how does someone come up with such beautiful music? How does he do that? And I wish I remembered Jeff's response to that. I think that would probably reveal what it means.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that she notices it and he doesn't, I think also says something about their characters.
Yeah.
And that he notices it after that. He looks over there and sees him more often. He pays more attention to the pianist after that moment. And as he does, more and more people show up at the pianist's house. Fancy parties all the time after that. Always music playing. Until Miss Lonely Heart is about to commit suicide. There's not a party, I think. Or is there a party? I don't remember. But he's playing the piano and he's playing that same piece. And I didn't expect that to be part of the movie, that she doesn't commit suicide because she hears the sound of the piano. She hears the music and that's what stops her. And then she goes up to see him, and the next you see of them, they're talking one morning next to the piano, and they're both smiling. And maybe my favorite thing about this movie is how much emotion Hitchcock can give a story that you never hear the voices of the characters and you never get close to their faces. All you see is just these very brief moments,
Hmm.
and you don't even see how they're connected. You just look one way, then you look the other way, and it's something different.
It's true. I might be wrong about this. Probably am. But I feel like there's some meaning behind the binoculars, and then he starts with the binoculars, right? And
Yeah.
then he starts using that other
I
camera.
think he switches to the camera when he starts thinking about it more seriously. Like he looks at
Oh.
it through the binoculars until he feels like there's something really dangerous going on. I get the feeling that he feels worse about using his camera than he does the binoculars.
Hmm.
It's interesting he never takes a picture, not once in the whole movie. And he's holding the camera almost the whole time. And uses the flash. It's like he has a flash. He could take pictures in the dark. He doesn't want to draw attention to himself. He could take pictures during the daytime and collect evidence. But he doesn't. Why not? Does it just not occur to him, or does he do that intentionally? I feel like there might be some significance in that.
It probably is.
Especially in the fact that he never takes a picture. Like part of the reason he might have switched to his camera was so that he would have the ability to take pictures and collect evidence, which would explain why he switched to it when he thought something suspicious was going on. But then he never takes a picture, never collects any evidence whatsoever. I feel like he should have taken a picture when the guy started like choking his girlfriend. Then he would have had evidence for that, but he didn't do that. I think at that point he was so concerned about her, he wasn't thinking about anything else. But I mean, other than that point, I feel like he should have been able to think, oh my goodness, this is important. Click, now I can show the police.
Yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, I just think he was like caught up in the moment.
Yeah. It could be an example of maybe like him thinking to himself that maybe he's not thinking clearly, like his own self-doubt. Like
Mm.
there's no point in taking a picture if it's not actually a problem. And it's weird, like if it wasn't for real. Like the whole time I was thinking, like I was doubting myself. Like, is this a problem or is this all in his head? Like I said before.
Yeah.
So taking pictures of random strangers in their houses is weird, especially with a telephoto lens zooming in on them. Like,
I think Alfred Hitchcock wants you to do that. I think he wants you to question how real the situation is.
yeah. I think the constant point of view shots kind of help that feeling of doubt,
Yeah.
because it could be just the character saying it this way. It's not the like omniscient camera perspective until the very end, or when you see his reaction shots. Everything else is through his own eyes. It feels a bit more grounded when he's seeing it through a camera or through the binoculars, but when he's just looking out the window, it could be anything. He could be wrong.
Yeah. Another thing I want to point out, I don't know if I said this, I can't remember. So the girl who's a dancer, she has a few guys over
Yeah.
throughout the movie, and Jeff is kind of like, "Oh, look at that." And then
Yeah.
Liza's like, oh, she's not in love with any of them. And I think that's interesting because she's almost always right about stuff. I
Yeah.
feel like for the most part. What do you think that means?
I think that another clue for that might be right after that, he goes, "Well, how do you know that?" And she goes, "Well, you said that apartment looked like my apartment. Didn't you say that?" And so I think she says that because she relates to that girl, the dancer. And the
Oh.
way that he sees her as too perfect and kind of in that upper class and just judging her based on where she lives has to do with him judging this girl in the same kind of two-dimensional way. So that's why she can understand his perspective being wrong on this. Whether or not she actually knows about anything about that actual situation is kind of irrelevant, just because she can understand his response to it.
That's interesting.
And I think another thing that helps, like again, that helps with the doubt aspect of it, when you find out there was a letter in the mail, that was true. This box didn't have a body in it, it was just clothes. That's
Yeah.
true. All these things are true, but it just ends up being part of the cover up instead of like evidence against it. So all of that mounting evidence against him all the way until the very end helps you think, even as time goes on, as they get evidence, as that guy actually is physically violent, you still think, what if that's just because she broke into the apartment? Like, what if he wouldn't have done that anyway? What if the dog died because it just died? You never see anything happen until the
Yeah.
very, very end. I keep saying until the end because like the ending stands out from the whole film. The rest of the film, it kind of has that vibe, like you do feel like you do understand how much time is passing, because it gives you, like, it shows you the morning, it shows you the night, and everything's very clear with that. But it does give you like a sense of, you don't know exactly how long each day is as far as
That's
runtime
true.
goes. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to tell you which day took up most of the runtime,
That's true.
or if it was a night sequence.
Yeah, you only see and know what Jeff knows.
Yeah, there's all those little groups and the people. What's the deal with the people sleeping outside on a mattress?
I don't know.
They have to go inside when it rains. They live there. They can go inside. They sleep outside on the mattress. I think it's worth asking. I have no idea why. Perhaps the good people of YouTube can answer all our
Probably.
questions and tell us how wrong we are with our interpretations. If you are listening to this on Spotify or some other thing that doesn't allow you to comment, maybe you want to check out the YouTube video and see all 3 comments.
You can angrily comment.
I just create alternate accounts to comment on all our videos. Like, wow, you guys have such profound insights, and I cried when you talked about the ending.
Oh my gosh.
What does the rain mean? It only rains once in that movie.
What's happening when it's raining? Can you remember?
It's night. The killer is going outside with briefcases, and he's just going in and out of his house.
Oh
all
yeah.
night. I think that's also when the lady has dinner with herself. But I'm not sure about that. I wonder if that's supposed to be... It'd be interesting to map this out on one of those charts that's like different plot points. Because then we could kind of see like where this fits into the structure of other screenplays. It totally fits screenplay structure. It's just hard to figure out what happened when. I think that was the midpoint, though. I think that was kind of when he finally decided like to look seriously into what's going on. Or it was either midpoint or like right up before that.
I feel like I already said this, but each window has like something to do with like a theme.
I think that is, yeah, for sure. If not as symbols, then as part of the movie itself, then yeah. We start with the theme of marriage and privacy from that one, the married couple, the newlyweds.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually one of the only people you hear dialogue from.
That's true.
At the very beginning.
Yeah.
And in their landlord, you also hear from too. And then to the right of them, all the way down, you have the artist. She makes a sculpture with a person with a giant hole in their stomach, and she calls it hunger. She sunbathes in her front or in her backyard, and she tries to help the dog stay away from the flowers. She says, I think she says he'll kill you to the dog or something. She says like that she tries to get him away, and she says something about the guy doing something unkind to the dog if the dog doesn't move away from the flowers. I think she might know about what's going on and not do anything, or she just cares about the dog. The fact that there's 3 different married couples and they all have different situations is interesting.
Mm-hmm. I do think that each of the married couples represents what his future with Liza could be like.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, you got it.
I got it.
Good job.
Well, because the couple all the way on the left, they just got married. It's very blissful and nice.
Yeah. Also, I think that Miss Torso, the dancer, I think that she also represents a possible future for them.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's super interesting, actually.
I mean, and obviously the Thorwalds would be like the worst case scenario.
Yeah. What was that the name of the... What is that the name of the murderer? Fourwall? Yeah. Fourwall. Fourth wall. Fourwall, fourth wall, looking through a window the whole movie from his perspective. And oh my gosh, Hayley, that's totally important. Wait. Because if you think of his room and you think of the fourth wall being the glass that separates him from the outside, right? And he's looking through his window. Remember when he's looking at the guy's apartment, and he gets the phone call, and he picks up the phone immediately, and there's you don't hear anything on the other side, and the guy turns and looks at the lens. Remember? Or no, that happens before. When Liza gets arrested, he looks around because he sees something in the apartment, and he sees Jimmy Stewart, and he looks right into the lens. Mr. Four-Wall looks right into the lens of the camera.
Fourth wall. Oh my gosh,
Yes.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
Yes.
Oh my
Oh my gosh.
gosh.
That feels
Oh
intentional.
yeah, for sure.
He breaks the fourth wall, and his name is Four-Wall. I love that. Okay, that makes the movie go up like a full rating point for me. Like that's so cool.
Yeah.
It's self-aware. That's showing you the film is self-aware. There's probably more things like that where it references its own medium. I mean, in a way, the fact that he uses a camera to look around is referencing the fact that this is a movie, even though it's a photographic camera.
Oh,
Everything he looks through is through a lens.
that is interesting.
So
Oh,
that further
he-
connects him to the
okay.
audience.
He looks through everything in a lens
Mm-hmm.
because he prejudges people and he already has assumptions.
Oh, yeah.
So his view on
And
everything
it
is
also-
tainted.
Yeah, and it connects him to the audience too, because we're seeing everything through the lens of the camera.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Everything has a reason in this movie. There's a purpose for all of it.
Yeah.
It's a very full movie that feels empty when you watch it.
Yeah. It does. I feel like all of Alfred Hitchcock movies are like that, where you, like, in order to
Yeah.
really enjoy it, you have to really think about it.
Yeah. The best movies for me are ones that you enjoy more after you've watched them, just thinking about
I agree.
them,
Yeah.
than actually sitting there watching it. Like I've enjoyed thinking about 2001: A Space Odyssey more than I did like actually
Oh,
watching
100%.
it. And thinking about it afterwards, you're like, oh my goodness, that was amazing. That's so cool. And it's like aging like cheese. It just gets better and better. I'm sure at a certain point you're like, okay, that's enough. It's not going to get better at this point. And then you watch it again, you're like, okay, I can think about it in a different way. But right now, it's kind of like the more I let it sit, the more I kind of think that was actually really good. This connects to that, and none of them are very clear realizations as far as that film goes. But it's kind of just the fact that it can stay in your head even after a month of not watching it.
Yeah.
I feel like this will be the same way. You'll like in a month we'll both be like, I can't believe that was a thing that we didn't notice, and it was there the whole time in every single second of the film.
Yeah.
Every frame had a watermark that said third wall, and it means something different.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. How would you rate Rear Window on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'd give Rear Window, as a film, I would give Rear Window a 9 out of 10.
Wow.
It's how creative it is, how different it is from everything I've ever seen. The slow pace, but you've got that feeling like you're seeing into all these different worlds all the time, and you're not even going anywhere. The fact you see everything from the character's perspective, and like you're introduced to all these details passively. There's no exposition dump in that movie. Everything is given to you by visuals or by some kind of underhanded dialogue. It's a perfect example of visual storytelling and using like suggestion and clues, not so the audience figures out what happens, but so they're invested in the story. And I really, really enjoyed that.
Nice. I give Rear Window an 8.5 out of 10.
That's
I
fair.
round
almost
up.
did
When
that.
I rate when I rate movies, I round up anyways. So it would actually be a 9 out of 10 on my letterbox thing. So I agree, the uniqueness of the movie is, I love that. I think it's so cool. The whole Thorwald fourth wall thing, that boosted
Yeah.
up a lot. That is
Yeah.
so cool. I loved this movie the first time I watched it. But the second time I watched it, I think it's just because I knew what was going to happen, and I was just less immersed.
Yeah, I can understand that. I wasn't really immersed on the first viewing either. Again, because it creates that, it has a weird feeling of you're both with the character, but you're separated from them intentionally. Like there's a distance, but you're also seeing everything from his perspective. And the distance becomes clearest at the end. So obviously after you've already been separated from him, I feel like I haven't seen it more than once, but I think probably rewatching it, you just get further from him.
Yeah.
But that might be the intent of the film, is like you don't really know him. This is a movie, and you're just watching it through a piece of glass.